Good morning. The time is now 11:02 in the morning on Tuesday, April 12, 2016. We're in room 123 of the John A. Wilson Building. I am David Grosso, chairperson of the Committee on Education, and I'm calling to order this fiscal year 2016-2017 Budget Oversight Hearing for the State Board of Education and the Public Charter School Board. The State Board of Education advises the State Superintendent of Education on educational matters, including state standards, state policies, including those governing special academic, vocational, charter, and other schools, state objectives, and state regulations proposed by the mayor or the State Superintendent of Education. The State Board of Education also approves a number of state-level policies involving truancy and absenteeism, high school graduation requirements, parental involvement, residency verification, and state accountability standards, among many others. The Public Charter School Board is the authorizing, overseeing body of the 112 public charter schools operating in the District of Columbia that serve over 37,000 children in the district. Public charter schools and adults. Public charter schools serve as an important alternative to public education. In order for us to say that our public charters are a success, it is vital that all of the local education agencies are held accountable for their actions so that we can say decisions were always made in the best interest of the student. Public charter schools are unique because they receive government funding to support their approach to education, but they also have the freedom to be more creative in their administration, curriculum, and classroom structures. Their approach to education can be innovative and steer children forward who would otherwise have difficulty in traditional public school settings. Today's budget hearing is an opportunity for the council and the public to hear about the State Board and the Public Charter Schools Board's initiatives for FY16 and 17. And respond to inquiries raised by myself and my staff as well as the public. These hearings inform the committee's work on the budget so that we can produce a sound and reasonable spending plan for the city. My questions today will follow up on the responses from the State Board and the Public Charter School Board to the committee's initial questions about their proposed budget. So I want to thank everyone that's come out to testify and for the Public Charter School Board for being here today as well as the State Board. I appreciate the work that each of these bodies does to address the needs in the District of Columbia of our students. Before turning to our public witnesses, never mind, I'll just turn to our public witnesses. Anyway, we're going to cruise through this hearing today. People that are here on behalf of an organization will have a 5-minute round, individuals a 3-minute round. Then we'll go to the government witnesses. Good morning, Councilmember Todd. Well, before I turn to the public witnesses, I have been joined by Councilmember Brandon Todd from Ward 4 and would like to turn to him now to see if he has any opening statement.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and I'll be brief. Thank you, Chairman Grosso, and good morning to our State Board representatives and our leaders at the Public Charter School Board. I'm looking forward to today's discussion about the fiscal year 2017 budget and how funding for both the State Board and the Public Charter School Board will benefit district students. Both the State Board of Education and the PCSB are important partners in the success of district students. The State Board of Education and its members provide vital insight into the development of education policy and give key advice to the district on policies related to state standards and policies. Because the State Board of Education plays such a vital role in how education policy is set in the district, it is important for the board to have sufficient funding to carry out these responsibilities. Recently, I met with members of the board and they expressed some concerns with this year's budget, particularly as it relates to how proposed funding will affect some of the State Board's core functions and duties. I hope to expand on that conversation today as we discuss the board's budget and its needs. I'm also looking forward to hearing from members of the Public Charter School Board about their fiscal year 2017 budget. The district's public charter schools provide valuable alternative instruction to the district traditional public schools, and the Public Charter School Board is vital to the development of those schools, whether it's through a rigorous approval process, setting academic standards, or providing oversight. The PCSB ensures that the district students have a high quality alternatives to traditional public schools. I was pleased to see that funding for both the PCSB and public charter schools increased during this fiscal year, and I look forward to speaking with Mr. Pearson about how the PCSB plans to enhance and expand the charter school experience in the district. In closing, I want to thank representatives from both the State Board of Education and the Public Charter School Board for attending today's hearing.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Todd. We're going to now move forward with the first panel of public witnesses. I'll make this statement again as I do every time I'm in these little rooms. I don't see why we can't have a table that's a little bit longer so we could put 4 witnesses at a time like we do in the hearing rooms upstairs, but whatever. We're going to do 3 again, which is ridiculous. At some point, I'll convince them to put a table in that's bigger. So, 3 at a time. Here we go. We have Lissa Rosenthal-Jaffe, the Executive Director of DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative. Thanks for being here. Tasha West, a parent. Is Ms. West here? Evelyn Downey, a parent. Ms. Downey. Thank you. Mary Elizabeth McNary. Good morning. You're up. Just turn your mic on, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Grosso, Council Member Todd, and members of the Education Committee. I'm Lissa Rosenthal-Jaffe. I am the Executive Director of the DC Humanities Arts and Education Collaborative, along with our partners at the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, DC Public Schools, DC Public Charter Schools, and 100 cultural institutional members. We are celebrating 18 years of providing access to world-class arts and humanities experiences and opportunities to DC public and public charter school students. This is nearly 750,000 students have benefited from us over the years. I'm here this morning specifically to ask the Council, to ask the State Board of Education to make arts and humanities education a priority, to adopt an arts education policy, and to embrace and include the arts as part of a well-rounded education as laid out in the Every Student Succeeds Act. And to expand funding for partnerships like ours, which provide systemic learning in the arts, such as tickets and transportation to arts and cultural venues and events in our city. Essentially, that is the work of our organization, the DC Collaborative. In addition to providing these world-class arts and humanities experiences in school and at cultural institutions for DC public and public charter school students and their educators, we offer these educators professional development training and opportunities in order to maintain high-quality, comprehensive arts access across every ward of the district. We know this work helps lead to student success and helps achieve a more vibrant community. For the most part, we do this work with little or no support from the district's public education system, and quite frankly, we think that's a shame. In order to ensure that our work can positively impact each student in every grade and across every ward, we really need your support. The DC Collaborative is uniquely qualified and as an exclusive provider of many of these services, and our 100 cultural institution members who represent leading organizations across our nation's capital. We well know that DC is home to many of the best world-class arts and humanities resources, and DC should be recognized as an arts and humanities education city, leading the way in how we invest in tomorrow's citizenry. We annually provide about 20 to 30,000 public and public charter school students at over 120 schools with these opportunities, working with our membership. And we really hope to have a more formal mechanism within the public school system that reflects this mastery that they achieve through the supplementary work of our nonprofit partners here in the district. So how best can we match our cultural resources, these cultural resources that we have, with the creativity of DC public and public charter school students both in and out of school, perhaps making this part of a larger cultural planning process, which, as we know, and thanks to Chairman Grosso, is well underway. And we hope that this would indeed benefit and impact the lives of all of our students and work that we can do together across all agencies of government. Together, we hope that we can create systemic change in ensuring that arts education is for all students. Collectively, we all have a unique, internationally renowned strengths and assets within this district. This is what we like to call our collective impact. And lessons in our field have learned from creating and sustaining partnerships like this how incredibly important it is for community arts education leaders to look to create arts education policy. And we have an opportunity now in the first time here in the district. In addition, we really hope as we move into this era of Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, that the state's arts education, at a recent state's arts education policy symposium that was actually held here in DC, ESSA was spotlighted, and it provides multiple opportunities for arts education, essentially ensuring that the arts are now officially, federally, part of a well-rounded education. So what what we ask is that the States Board and OSSI please move forward. As you're moving forward with your subsequent ESSA waiver and renewal and amendment of statewide accountability plan as you proposed in the state superintendent, we ask that the arts be included in future policy plans. We think that's very important. You have the power to make this decision that ensures an articulation of the arts as part of this well-rounded education I spoke of, and is required in our state planning. And that's essentially why I'm here today. So DC needs a coherent and comprehensive approach to arts education, one that includes an arts education policy and plan, one that advances sequential learning in the arts and builds on robust in-school and out-of-school resources. And the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative, along with our members, can help you strengthen the role that the arts can play in the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Downey, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Hi, I'm Evie Downey, and I'm the parent of an 8th grade student who's funded by DC to go to Kennedy Krieger Institute High School, which is in Baltimore. And his name is Charlie, and he has autism spectrum disorder and a bunch of related disabilities. And he also has PTSD and post-traumatic stress disorder. That's as a result of a series of assaults by his dedicated aide who was provided to him at Brent Elementary School when he was 8 years old in DC Public School. He was in 3rd grade. And as a result of these assaults, he was left out of school for 2 months, stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped doing anything, and was diagnosed with PTSD. And last year, after a 4-year lawsuit, during which it was revealed that the aide was in fact a convicted felon who was on a suspended sentence at that moment for attempted assault and was on court-ordered, the aid agency is TAMA, and it's still used by the District of Columbia Public Schools, by the way. Anyway, we won a settlement with the aid agency in the courts of things, and we won a jury trial against the city last year. So in an IEP meeting, at that point he was out of school again. In June 2015, it was determined that Charlie would receive the non-public placement and that OSSI would be providing a list of schools for the team to consider. However, at that point, about a month and a half went by, and finally we're at the point where most of the schools that were a good fit for him were already full. And he was accepted at one school where they basically told me on the phone they'd have to provide him a bodyguard because it was for kids with emotional disabilities who had been, as the head of school said, locked up for a minute. And so we didn't see our 8th grader who was going to be in 9th grade because he's academically gifted, so he was skipping a year. We didn't see that as a good fit. But in the meantime, Kennedy Krieger came through with an acceptance, said there were a few details to tie up, little loose ends, dot T's, cross I, you know. And we had to pay over $2,000 for an attorney because OSSI was giving us the runaround and trying to make us go to this other school, which cost the same amount of money. Thankfully, I called the Ombudsman's office, and finally, after 8 years of fighting in DC public schools for an education for my son, they were just incredible. We actually ended up coming to a resolution without what they tried to do, but just the idea that as a parent in DC public schools, there was someone who answered the phone and listened to me and tried to help, and then called me back on a Saturday at night when I needed it after all these years. So as a graduate of DC Public Schools, I think that this is very much a needed resource for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. McNary.
Hi, I'm Mary Elizabeth. Is this on?
Almost. It'll be, there it is.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. First time. I'm Mary Elizabeth McNary. I'm the mother of 16-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. I leave it to you to think about that. My first call to the Ombudsman's office was in panic and desperation because I really, without the help of this educational lighthouse, our family might never have been able to navigate the unfamiliar and sometimes treacherous waters of special ed in the District of Columbia, and we're very grateful. I called the Ombudsman's office in a panic when I learned that DCPS had suddenly decided to cut the funding for the special education services that my 9th grade son, Aiden, had been receiving ever since elementary school. It was determined that Aiden's grades had become too good. So DCPS was suddenly advocating a mid-year transfer out of Kingsbury, his non-public school placement. Despite the documentation from the psychiatrist treating him, the psychologist, that such a move could have psychologically harmful consequences to Aiden, it seemed that the transfer was going to be required. And all because my son was doing too well in school. The associate ombudsman was a godsend. She taught me whom to talk to, what questions to ask them, and she advocated for my son as we attempted to keep him at Kingsbury until a smoother transition could be effected. She spoke multiple times with the school, by phone, by email. She even came to an IEP meeting with me and my husband. And in the end, her recommendation to wait until a natural breaking point for transfer from Kingsbury to a general education mainstream classroom could happen without a huge bump in the road. Aiden thus had time to learn more of the skills that are needed to succeed in a mainstream classroom. Because of the associate ombudsman, Aiden has avoided prematurely losing the special ed support that he needed. The ombudsman's office preserved that support, and now my son is thriving in a mainstream classroom yet. He is carrying a full high school course load, and in addition to that, he's working to become an Eagle Scout. Aiden can now excel both socially and academically because he was given the time to learn the skills that the rest of us so often take for granted. Without the help of the Ombudsman's office, I wouldn't have known how to cope with with this situation, how to advocate on my son's behalf. Imagine how many other parents right here in D.C. will raise better educated citizens simply because they have access to the Ombudsman's office, the navigator and educator of all of us. My daughter's currently in the hospital, but I came today because the work of the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education is so critical. I am truly grateful that this excellent resource exists for us parenting in D.C. I am honored to have the opportunity to communicate the difference that this office has made in my son's life, and I'm confident that the District of Columbia can count on the superb work of this office can continue. All you have to do is fund it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for being here and expressing your testimony to support the Ombudsman's work. And I'm sorry to hear about your daughter. I hope she has a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
The fact is that I agree the Ombudsman's office is a great asset to the District of Columbia, and it's great to have you on the record talking about your experience. And hopefully we can continue to fund them at the highest levels that we can so that there's no waiting list, which is a problem now. So we're working on that. Ms. Rosenthal-Yaffe, I would be happy to move forward on an arts education policy. We have to think about what it looks like and work on it, and maybe our offices can work together over the next few months to figure out what that is. I've heard some folks at the Commission on Arts and Humanities have talked about it a lot, but I haven't seen anything in writing. So it would be really helpful to get a document together, and we could actually then debate it, work on it, and figure out how to get it implemented. It may be that my office can help take the lead on that conversation, but it would be really great to have OSSI as well as the state board engaged in the conversation so that as we move forward, it's embraced by the whole city.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chairman Grosso.
Your mic's not on.
Apologize. I should know better. Sorry. Thank you so very much. Indeed, there is an arts education policy task force. This is something that's been in the work for some time, led by Commissioner Rona Wolf-Friedman and others. So I'll take that message back to her and back to the task force.
Yeah, I'm ready to do
Yeah.
it. I think it's important. It's an incredibly important part of education that we don't embrace enough in our city, and it's time to step up the game on it. So thank you very much. Councilmember Todd, do you have any questions for this
Yes, thank
panel?
you, Chairman. I don't really have any questions, but thank you both for your testimony. And Mr. Rosenthal Yaffe, I know that we met maybe a month or so ago, and as you know, I have advisory committees in Ward 4 around education issues and arts, culture, and humanities, among many others. And as a result of our meeting, I have asked that those two committees work together on figuring out ways that we can come up with some policy suggestions. So I'll definitely keep you in the loop, Chairman Grosso, and certainly look forward to continuing to work with you and your colleagues. And thank you for the good suggestions.
Thank you. Okay, we have another panel of public witnesses for the State Board of Education. Is Ms. Tasha West here? Somebody said she might have come in. Great. Come on up, Ms. West. And Rhea Vaflor, also a parent, wants to join us from the other one. Oh, Ms. Rosenthal Yaffe, you are also on the other.
Yes, I am.
Do you want to be on both, or do you want me to? Are you good?
I don't want to start with slow.
Yeah, well, you have testimony for the next. Okay, no, I'll leave you on that list then. That's fine. Is there anybody else that wants to testify now on the State Board of Education as a public witness? Okay, you two are it. Why don't you begin, Ms. West?
Good morning, Chairman Grosso and members of the Education Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning about my experience working with the Ombudsman's Office for Public Education. My name is Tasha West, and I'm the parent of a 7th grader at Columbia Heights Education Campus. I had to call on the Ombudsman's Office to help get my son into school this year because I was told by the special education coordinator for the 7th grade that the 7th grade cohort had been filled and that my child was being placed on a waiting list. I then emailed the coordinator my son's lottery letter from my school DC. Even upon the school's receipt of the letter, my son was still denied his slot at check. I knew what was going on, and I immediately called the Ombudsman's Office and Advocates for Justice and Education. I left messages with both offices, and Khadijah Williams with the Ombudsman's Office called me right back within minutes. I told her how my son was being denied his slot and how I enrolled him at check in June before the start of school year 2015-2016. She told me to contact the DCPS Enrollment and Operations Office, and she called the school directly to inquire about my son's situation. I had only 4 days until school started, and my son really wanted to attend this school, and he was already on the waiting list prior school year. I wasn't expecting to get any help at all, but Khadijah Williams jumped right into it as if he were her son. Khadijah and Joyanna worked together with the DCPS Office of Enrollment and Operations. They were all told that I did not register him by their deadline, even though I did enroll him early. After I submitted my son's enrollment package, I then emailed the voicemail message from a staff member at Columbia Heights Education Campus telling me to come back and pick up my son's enrollment packet because they could not accommodate him due to his previous records and that I had to register him at my neighborhood school, which would have been Kramer. That wasn't happening. So, after listening to the voicemail, Khadijah then spoke with her supervisor, Joyanna Smith, along with Ms. Eunice Stephan at DCPS Central Office. They contacted Columbia Heights Education Campus and explained to them that my son was selected through the lottery, and he was already enrolled, and I had already purchased uniform shirts and the jackets. Joanna and Khadijah informed Check that they did not have a choice about whether or not to accept my son because he was already accepted through the lottery process. In response, the school did agree, and they requested that I resubmit my documentation such as proof of residency documents, enrollment package, and my son was able to attend Check, and he started school on the first day. The Ombudsman's Office played a major role in my son's education this year because he was clearly being discriminated against, and it was my word against a DCPS official. The Ombudsman's office was my voice when I couldn't speak for myself. They did not take sides, and they actually trusted that what I was telling them was the truth, and I appreciated that. I needed that. They made sure that all of the facts were brought to the principal's attention. Even after school started and the whole situation had been resolved, my son was in school at least the first week and the second week. Even the first month, they called, Khadijah called, checked on him, made sure he wasn't being singled out as far as behavior-wise, nothing. Like, they really called and checked, and I needed that too, because I was worried about that as well. What if he get in and then they start just singling him out, oh, he did this, he did that, and want to just put him out. That's what he was used to. None of that.
Great. Thank you.
And I appreciate you ladies, all of you ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Vaffler?
Good morning. Members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to give a DC parent's perspective on charter school budgets. My name is Rhea Vaffler. My daughter Sloan is a kindergartner at Lamb, South Dakota campus in Ward 5. I'm also here today as a member of the Parent and Alumni Leadership Council of the DC PCSB. We're fortunate to live in a city that's economically thriving. Unemployment is low and new businesses are opening daily. Many people are realizing that DC is a great place to live and raise a family and continue to stay in the city rather than move to the suburbs. To continue the growth of the city, we need to ensure that the city's charter schools continue to grow and thrive as well. Now that almost 50% of DC families choose to enroll their children in charter schools, you can see that charter schools have proven they are highly valued for their high academic standards and educational program diversity to fit individual student needs. However, charter schools have a challenge that DC PCS schools do not have. Almost all charter schools continue to struggle annually with the issue of facilities. Unfortunately, charter schools compete with private sector businesses and other charter schools for space. In a booming economy, commercial real estate prices and rates are between $25 to $50 a square foot, which is out of the reach of many schools in areas that would be desirable charter school locations, i.e. close to public transportation, cultural amenities, and parks. As a result, you have charter schools moving every few years because they're being pushed out of their locations for other entities. As you can imagine, this is highly disruptive to students' academic performance, makes it difficult for schools to serve their communities and fulfill their academic missions. Since schools have to allocate financial resources for build-outs of new space every few years, that's diverting resources from academic and program endeavors. Here are 3 recommendations that I respectfully request that the council consider for this year's budget. 1, charter schools be given the same budget or more allocation for facilities as DC PCS schools, so that they have additional financial leverage in the marketplace and it equalizes the pay for rent scenario that DCPS schools do not have to face. 2, create policy initiatives that make it mutually beneficial for private developers to pair with charter schools and welcome the schools into their mixed-use buildings on the ground floors at a reduced rent basis as a neighborhood proffer. To make this arrangement successful, some level of neighborhood preference for student slots at the charter school may have to be offered. And 3, consider the creation of charter incubator spaces around the city in decommissioned DC public schools so that fledgling independent charter schools can co-locate for 5 years, share amenities like play spaces and multi-purpose rooms, establish school communities, and then move when they have better ability to make strategic and funded plans to move to larger facilities. In closing, charter schools are integral to the distinctive, vibrant culture of the district and need additional financial resources for facilities to thrive. Thank you for your time and the things that you do for DC students.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony, and I'll make sure that the Public Charter School Board knows that you came when their time comes up. And also, thank you also, Ms. West, for coming down and sharing your story. I'm glad to hear that your son is in the school and things are being done there properly, and I'm glad to hear the Ombudsman played a good role in that. So thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to now go to the, I'm sorry. Oh, stepped out. Okay. We're going to now turn to the government witnesses for the State Board of Education. We have Jack Jacobson, who's the president of the D.C. State Board, Joyanna Smith, the ombudsman for public education, and Faith Gibson Hubbard, the chief student advocate, will be joining me at the table. Mr. Jacobson, are you going first?
Yes, sir.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman Grosso and members of the Education Committee and the public. My name is Jack Jacobson, and I'm the president of the District of Columbia State Board of Education. thank you for the opportunity to testify related to the fiscal year 2017 budget of the State Board of Education, the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education, and the Office of the Chief Student Advocate. The Ombudsman and Student Advocate have prepared their own testimony that will provide additional details about their offices. Before I get too much farther, I also want to acknowledge our Vice President, Karen Williams from Ward 7 is here, and our wonderful staff team is also here. During question and answer, I would like our Executive Director to join us at the table to answer technical questions. The mission of the State Board of Education is to provide policy leadership, support, advocacy, and oversight of public education to ensure that every student is valued and is able to gain the skills and knowledge necessary to become informed, competent, and contributing global citizens. We are the only elected body in the District of Columbia that has a specific focus on a single issue, education. The State Board provides the citizens of this amazing city with a direct voice into education policy development, and we are very proud to be involved. The State Board plays a critical role in the district's education governance system. As you noted at our performance oversight hearing a few weeks ago, Mr. Chairman, the State Board has become an agency focused on delivering efficient and effective benefits to the district residents. The State Board committed itself to deepening and broadening its relationships with other district agencies, such as the Deputy Mayor for Education, the State Superintendent, the Public Charter School Board, and DC Public Schools. By doing so, we have all gained new perspectives and included more voices in the decision-making process. These relationships have enabled the board to have one of its most productive years in recent memory. We worked with OSSI and the adult education community to create the state diploma, which should have a positive impact on many of our residents striving for a pathway to the middle class. We worked with a diverse set of stakeholders across sectors to create avenues for flexibility in how high school students can earn credit for their knowledge and mastery of standards, and Laura Wilson-Phelan from Ward 1 did an excellent job on that heading that task force. And soon, we will be voting on new health education standards that were developed with input from students, teachers, and practitioners from all across the city, and some national experts on health education policy. That is why, Mr. Chairman, I am frustrated by the budget submitted by the administration. As an independent agency, the State Board should not be subject to competing for funding with the administration's policy priorities. In fact, the State Board of Education Establishment Act of 2007 specifically precludes this from happening. Unfortunately, those provisions were not followed, leaving an unacceptable hole of over 15% in our agency's budget. Our ask of the committee and of the council is to simply restore our budget to the full amount in our need for appropriations so that we can all do our job, including meeting the mandatory requirements of the Language Access Act. The State Board believes the residents of the District of Columbia, we provide the residents with direct access to education policy development and to conflict resolution services and training not offered by other district agencies. As you know, the State Board is composed of 3 offices, the Board, the Ombudsman, and the Student Advocate. Each has its own role and duties, but all 3 work together to ensure our mission to promote equity and achievement is realized in every public school. The State Board has an ambitious year ahead of it. In partnership with OSSI, we will develop the state-level implementation plan of the recently passed Every Student Succeeds Act. In addition to this, we will revise our city's high school graduation requirements. We are also undertaking a broad effort to include more voices at the education decision-making table, a priority I know that you also find extremely important. We will intensify our efforts to reach out to families of our most vulnerable and marginalized students, ideally employing innovative in-person and technological outreach tactics. But this effort will not be possible with the administration's budget mark. Under ESSA, the district has much greater flexibility and responsibility in addressing school performance. This is a watershed moment where we need to think thoughtfully and critically about what we believe constitutes a successful school in Washington. One of my colleagues has likened this to a moonshot landing event in public education. Hyperbole aside, I do want to stress the vital nature and role the State Board has over the next few years in implementing ESSA. The board will be engaging with the community on these large questions and working diligently with OSSI to develop an accountability plan that will encourage positive changes in our education system. This work will include determining what schools will be measured on, how to weight each measure, and how to effectively support low-performing schools. I must be clear, to create a state plan under ESSA with meaningful, engaged feedback from the community will be a substantial lift, but the board is excited to be a partner in this work. In order to ensure that the board has an appropriate authority to continue its role in state accountability under ESSA, we'll need to adjust our enabling statutes. The code currently makes numerous references to No Child Left Behind, the previous reauthorization of ESEA, and the statute needs to be updated to reflect the new law. We will look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, the administration, and the rest of the council on these adjustments. The district has some of the most stringent and defined graduation requirements in the country. Our graduation rates remain abysmally low, with only 61% of our students graduating in 4 years. We need to take a critical eye to our requirements and make sure they are fair to our students while remaining rigorous and ensuring that students graduate with the comprehensive skills necessary to succeed today. In the coming months, the board will be hosting town halls, participating in community meetings, and doing research on best practices so that we may make an informed decision and provide our students and schools with a fair and high-quality requirements. We look forward to working closely with OSSI on this throughout the rest of the year. One of the hardest parts of being an effective elected official is reaching out and truly listening to the most vulnerable and underrepresented residents of our city. These voices represent the majority of students in our system, but are the voices we hear from the least. I know that's true in my ward. When you look at the stunning gap in the academic test scores between our most and least advantaged students and compare that with the voices most influencing our policy choices, two things become clear. First, that what we are trying in education is not helping at-risk students or isn't working fast or broadly enough. Second, that in creating solutions, we need to do more to solicit ideas and advice from those most impacted by the problems we seek to address. There is no shortcut to accomplishing this. It takes relationship building and innovative outreach. As elected representatives with a mandate to influence the district's education policy, we must have the personnel resources to engage in this important work. We want to prevent the need for families to reach out to the Ombudsman because they have not been involved in these decisions that affect their lives. The Ombudsman should be a last resort and used in rare and unusual cases. She's incredibly effective, but we should be working with our student advocate to try and cut that off to reduce her caseload ultimately. We are lucky in the district to have a population of very active and very involved residents who are very grateful for their efforts, as am I. The State Board will be working this year in a concerted effort to bring new and more diverse voices to the table, including disconnected youth and working parents. We owe it to our constituents to seek them where they are and to find out how we can help make them the district education system better. Now to our budget. In FY17, the Board of Education estimates that a total need of appropriations of $1,449,814 is necessary for its operation and the operation of its 3 offices. This total need is based on a true and accurate review of the agency's establishing statutes, legal requirements, and the experience of the agency. The proposed budget represents a shortfall of over $200,000 from the board's submission in January. As noted in the letter I sent to the council earlier this month, the State Board is bound by law to provide the administration with its need for appropriations, which is to be submitted directly to the council without change as part of the budget submission. This provision in the State Board statute is instrumental in protecting it from unrelated political or policy decisions. The administration utilized an inaccurate current services funding level projection that does not reflect the true cost of operating the agency. As you know, the CSFL is a representation of the local funds cost of operating district agencies without the consideration of any new policy decisions. The CSFL only took into account what was currently in place, not the fact that what was in place was already well below the resources necessary to fulfill our mandates. In the future, we would ask to be consulted by the administration and the chief financial officer prior to the release of the budget to prevent these errors. Mr. Chairman, small agencies like the State Board are particularly sensitive to even small reductions in our budgets. For instance, the 3% cost of living adjustments to increase in October, appropriately increasing our staff's salaries to keep pace with inflation, caused an enormous hole in our non-personnel services fund for fiscal year 16 because no additional funds were provided to cover these costs. In fact, the CSFL noted these shortfalls, and according to the proposed budget, the majority of these increases were actually provided to help meet the costs of the next COLA increase. However, the holes from having to squeeze to meet these increases year after year continue to persist. In practical terms, we do not have the ability to provide services like language access. A waiting list for services from the Ombudsman and the student advocate continues to grow, Mr. Chairman. And it means that the State Board cannot keep pace with education reforms that are so needed in our city. Without appropriate resources, our staff will remain overworked, and the vital and deep, broad community outreach necessary for education reform success will remain undone. Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I did not mention the administration's budget does provide additional funding to the agency for equipment and machinery purchases, as well as funding for repair and maintenance of the agency's QuickBase data system. What these numbers don't tell you, however, is that the funding is inadequate to either upgrade or maintain the cost of the current QuickBase system utilized by the Ombudsman's office. We will continue to work with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer on the system and will keep you informed of our progress. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I want to be clear that the State Board of Education is unanimous in its support for education reform in the district. My colleagues and I were elected to get things done. We are asking that the Council help ensure that we have the budget to do that. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are you going next, Ms. Smith? All right. Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Grasso and members of the Council's Committee on Education. I think I'm just too small. My name is Joyanna Smith, and I am the Ombudsman for Public Education. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the fiscal year 2017 budget of the State Board of Education, and specifically the budget needs of the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education. The Office of the Ombudsman is responsible for helping students and parents resolve problems they encounter with the District of Columbia public schools and public charter schools. We offer conflict resolution services to parents, families, and students, and we are committed to resolving school-related complaints, disputes, and problems quickly and efficiently in all areas that affect student learning. Some of the areas where we frequently receive complaints include school discipline, bullying, truancy, special education, and transportation. The purpose of our office is to bridge the communication gap between families and schools in order to resolve disputes, advocate for fairness of process and outcomes, and finally, help connect parents to resources within the city. We have focused on a few programmatic initiatives for the school year and also into FY17, which include continuing to build awareness of the services that we provide, translating our core materials into other languages, and we've started with Spanish this year, continuing to refine our data collection, and identifying ways to increase the quality of our services, but by designing systems around the ways that we help our families. We want to ensure that our families consistently receive high-quality services from all of our staff members and fellows. We will briefly turn to our budget needs. We have been carefully monitoring our case numbers this school year because our two currently funded FTEs and our shared program associate are stretched thin by the responsibilities of handling intake, researching policies and procedures and applicable laws, reaching out to school officials in order to try to reach resolution, and engaging in outreach activities. We would like to take an opportunity to acknowledge the support of the Committee on Education for the addition of a program associate in FY16. The addition of the program associate position, Ms. Khadijah Williams, to support the Ombudsman's office and the Office of the Student Advocate has been critical in managing our intakes, assisting with casework, and helping us with data collection and analysis. We very much appreciate the assistance that Ms. Williams has provided to our offices. However, she is often working 7 days a week in order to support both offices. Without the addition of another full-time staff member within the Office of the Ombudsman, we will not be able to continue to meet the growing need of the community under the current staffing model. As noted in the fiscal impact statement for the legislation establishing the Ombudsman's office, 4 full-time employees were originally thought necessary for a fully functioning office. We cannot continue to rely upon short-term fellows and interns for case management. We propose to transition from relying so heavily on our fellows who are only with us for approximately 3 months and have limited hours each week to a model where we are utilizing more full-time staff members. We believe that our families will benefit from the day-to-day continuity afforded by working with full-time staff members. There are times when case-related meetings are scheduled or new case developments occur during a fellow's absence. When these situations occur, the current full-time staff members end up taking on additional case responsibilities for cases assigned to fellows, as well as maintaining our own caseload. Or worse, there are times when we cannot participate in a client meeting or important conversations because our fellows are out of the office during that time. In order to manage the increasing demands upon our office, we have started to find a way of prioritizing cases that come into our office in order to determine whether we can assist the families that contact us. For example, we now prioritize cases when students have been excluded from school, are truant, bullied or harassed, have mental health issues or parents who have mental health issues, or are limited English speaking. We also prioritize cases when the process is unfair or has not been followed correctly, or when the relationship between the school and or parents and guardians are negatively impacting the student's educational outcomes. We have also had to resort to using a wait list for several families over the last month or so due to capacity issues. If we cannot receive additional funding for another full-time staff member for FY17, then at minimum, we are requesting funding to pay for another part-time position. We asked for an FTE to support both offices for FY16, and we believe that additional funding for a part-time position would make a third full-time position within our office. In giving some context to our caseload, we addressed 469 cases last school year. And we have already accepted nearly 330 cases this school year, and there's a good possibility that we will accept more cases than we accepted last school year. We analyzed data for last school year, which was SY17, and found that when we have more people on hand, we are able to accept and resolve more cases, and we're able to resolve cases within a shorter period of time. When we promptly resolve cases, then kids return back to school within an earlier time frame and more quickly receive the services they need to succeed. Thus, we would appreciate your support in making the Ombudsman's office better staffed to meet the needs of our DC public school families. Finally, since its inception, the reestablished Office of the Ombudsman has worked hard to increase public awareness of the Ombudsman's services. As a result, the Ombudsman's office will need to translate print and electronic materials into non-English languages spoken by a critical mass of public school families. In conclusion, we appreciate the support that we have received from the Education Committee. Thanks to the reestablishment of the Ombudsman's Office, public education stakeholders now have a resource for early detection of new issues, an independent and dedicated mechanism for tracking issues and outcomes, and a source of recommendations for systemic change to improve existing processes. Parents, families, and students, as well as educators, can share their education-related problems and concerns with our office by calling us at 202-741-0886 or emailing us at ombudsman@dc.gov or visiting the DC State Board of Education website, which is located at www.sboe.dc.gov. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gibson, Hubbard.
Good morning, Chairman Grosso, and to all the members of the Education Committee. My name is Faith Gibson Hubbard, and I'm honored to serve in the role of Chief Student Advocate for the District of Columbia. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. The Office of the Student Advocate was created to be an essential resource for those seeking to navigate the complexities of the public school system in the District of Columbia. The mission of our office is to support and empower DC residents to achieve equal access to public education as an informational resource and that supports students and parents through outreach and advocacy. In our work, we provide step-by-step assistance for parents, students, families, and community members to be informed, be connected, and be empowered. Thus, this work requires a multi-pronged approach to ensure that parent and student voices are heard throughout the District of Columbia. The current services that our office provides is that we operate a public education information hotline, which receives requests for assistance from students, parents, community members to answer questions that they might have, provide information about public education, and to refer individuals who contact our office to the appropriate agencies, offices, or organizations within the district that can meet their specific needs. This can also be done online on the State Board website. We also have created and operate our online education and community resource guide, which offers access to more than 400 resources in 30 various category areas about different resources, agencies, and organizations that are focused on and impact public education and education attainment in the district. We also provide generalized coaching to students and parents and families on a variety of particular public education issues. Specifically, our office has received a lot of questions around enrollment. We will continue to partner with relevant DC government agencies, community-based organizations to assist families on questions regarding the enrollment process, targeted trainings and information sessions, and to provide a host of online resources that equip families with advocacy tools and strategies to empower them and improve their access to education and outcomes for students. Some of the trainings that we currently provide are panel discussions and Know Your Rights workshops on special education and parent organization leadership and development work in Ward 7 and Ward 5. For fiscal year 17, our office looks to continue to engage in the aforementioned programmatic initiatives while adding others. For the purpose of this testimony, I would like to highlight a few vital programmatic initiatives that our office wants to further engage in that are vital to serving parents and students, but we will find very challenging to do with our current FY17 budget allocation. The first initiative is that we would like to build and implement a secure and functional database to track the activities of the office and questions and concerns that are brought to our office and who we refer them to. The transition from our current database, which is actually Google Drive, over to a secure system that can appropriately track questions and who we refer families to out of our office, in addition to the community work that we do, is vitally important. It will allow us to provide a greater level of confidentiality to the families that call and also guarantee that the questions and information that is shared with our office is truly secure. An appropriate database will also give our office the ability to better understand the trends and correlations that our office is seeing, and will give us the ability to appropriately be responsive and tailor the different types of approaches, trainings, and supports that we offer families, as well as advocacy. The second initiative is a focus on parent and student empowerment and advocacy. The goal of this initiative is to improve the capacity of parents, families, students, and prospective parents to be able to navigate the education landscape and the educational process so that they become better and more informed about the options that they have and are able to be able to advocate for themselves. This will be realized through the creation of additional resources that could be printed and not just online, and really make it to communities that don't really get all their materials online. As well as we could have more information about very specific target areas that continue to arise that not only we see in the Ombudsman's office, but just throughout the city, around special education, student discipline, student enrollment, and effective communication tools. This would also include the expansion of our trainings that could be even more student-focused, which we would love to do, and really help to support the work around parent leadership in Ward 7 and Ward 5, while also supporting our Volunteer Advocate Initiative program. Our office must focus on strategies to improve its website presence and make the appropriate adjustments to ensure that it is user-friendly and interactive for students and families. This is particularly important for our online education community and resource guide, which is currently just a series of PDFs, and would be really useful if it could really be mined in a way that would be useful to community members, parents, and families. Currently, this guide is really great, but it has a very limited reach and usability. Language access is also a barrier to engagement with non-English or limited English-speaking communities. It is vital for our office to increase and improve access to families of non-English-speaking populations, thus to offer more materials that are not only online, but also printed and can reach out into those communities in their various different languages. Translation of materials is only one step in the right direction, but our office does a lot of community-facing things, and having the ability to actually have interpretation on site would also really assist with that, particularly with our special education workshops. Because further state that many of our interactions with parents happen within schools, community places, or workshops or trainings that we facilitate. And lacking the ability to be able to provide interpretation services is really setting up a block of barriers to access for those particular families, which could use those services. Finally, staffing remains a challenge, and I definitely echo the sentiments of my colleague, the Ombudsman. There's so much work to be done, but limited staffing capacity really makes it very challenging. Khadijah Williams does phenomenal work for both of our offices, but she is working several days a week, and that would make our office the office of 1.5. And so we appreciate all of the support that the Committee on Education has given in order to allow that position to be possible. But we definitely need some assistance in that area. And I would also be remiss if I did not share, finally, the contact information for our office. So if anyone would like to reach out to our office about public education resources, they can. We can be reached at 202-741-4692 or by emailing student.advocate@dc.gov, or you can also visit the State Board of Education website at SBOE.dc.gov. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. I appreciate all of y'all's testimony. I do have a few follow-up questions, but not too many. To start with, Mr. Jacobson, I received your letter from April 1st, which expresses, and you expressed it again in your testimony today, your deep concern about the budget that was submitted on behalf of the State Board by the mayor. In the letter, you state that the submission, quote, does not reflect our need for appropriation and inaccurately states that it reflects no change from the agency budget submission to the administration's proposed budget, end quote. I understand now from meeting with your staff and also hearing in your testimony that you believe that there's a $200,000 difference. Can you talk a little bit more about that, just in less formal testimony terms and more just straight up what we're talking about here?
Sure.
Thanks.
I know about it, but John Paul knows the specifics a little bit more, so I'll ask Mr. Hayworth to address that question
Just
directly.
introduce yourself for the record, Mr. Hayworth, and we'll go from there.
I'm John Paul Hayworth, the Executive Director of the DC State Board of Education. The provision in our establishment statute says that we are to submit our need for appropriations to the mayor each year, which should be included in her budget submission and then can be accompanied with her recommendations. We did submit that information on December 11th, 2015, and then were unable to hear additional information from the mayor until she submitted her budget to the council.
Okay, so they just didn't respond to you at all, and then they submitted the budget, and you're not even sure if they took into consideration what you sent them?
I'm unsure of any deliberations within the mayor's office.
Is that true for the whole board?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay. I appreciate that.
I don't know if Ms. Gibson Hubbard or Ms. Smith.
And I know that you also CC'd them on the letter that you sent to me, and so I'm wondering if you got any response at all from that.
I have not had additional conversations with the mayor's office.
Okay, so now what I need to do is, in the letter, you also talked about the statutory requirements that you're not able to fulfill because you don't have the money in place or the staffing in place. I don't know if you can answer that now, but what I need is a breakdown of, it's one thing to say that you need more staffing, and I support that. I think there could be more staffing. There's certainly a need demonstrated in the Ombudsman and Student Advocate's office for that. The other question, though, is what is not getting done that you believe is statutorily mandated that this $200,000 would give you the opportunity to do. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Correct, I do. Okay. We don't want to give you an impartial list, so if you allow, we'll take that back. We'll work with our colleagues and get you a full and complete list of those statutory mandates that we need to meet.
Right. So in particular, what we'll need is a personnel versus non-personnel breakdown, and then where those programmatic, where that money will go in the personnel aspect. Will it go for staffing this, for this, for this, and then tie that into the statutory requirement. Yes, I'm not. We've met about this. I'm not opposed to the need for more money in the state board and for the work that's being done in the state board. I think. However, there is clearly a disconnect in the communication and an understanding of how we move forward on this. I have Deputy Mayor Niles before me tomorrow, and I will be asking her similar questions about the budget and see how she reacts. I think their thought is that they've given you a little more money than last year, albeit a very little more, and that they believe that they've therefore left you unharmed like any other agency. So if you're going to make the argument that you should be treated differently from other agencies, that's where we need to go from here. And that argument hasn't been made yet. And I'll be honest with you, I think the credibility of the state board is in a new place now. It is in a much better place from when I started on the council, and I'm impressed by the work that you all have done to get us to this position. But it is a building process, so we're going to keep working on it and hopefully get to the point where the state board is, even better and better and better. I was impressed with the work you did this year on lots of different initiatives, certainly in both of your offices, the work that's been done. And so now we just have to call in on that, and say, look, we have the credibility. Now you need to work with us to give us the independence to do our job.
And if I may respond really briefly, and Joy and Faith, please chime in if you have any additional comments, is we have worked harder and done more with less. I think I can say that for all three offices. We remain committed to serving the students of the District of Columbia and our adult learners. But at the same time, we understand that we are stewards of the public funds. This isn't a piggy bank for us. This is us needing this to do the work that needs to be done. And if the administration wants to continue to move as swiftly as it has on education reform, as it should, we need to be able to keep up. And we should not simply be a rubber stamp for the administration. We need to do independent policy analysis, and we need to do the public outreach and real deep engagement with folks that don't necessarily always come to the table to make sure that we do it right, so that we're getting the views of those that are most marginalized and most vulnerable in our city.
I echo the same sentiment. I do want to mention the two people that work with me every day, so Beth Tossell and Khadijah Williams. They have done a phenomenal job, and so we have been able to raise the standard every day, but I am concerned about overworking them and losing good talent. So any additional resources would be great.
Yes, and Khadijah has been phenomenal. Khadijah Williams has been phenomenal to both of our offices, but I also have to say that a lot of times it feels very lonely, and if it wasn't for my colleagues Joyanna and Elizabeth, I'm not sure what I would do about thought partnership, because they do help collaborate with me to just think through the different ideas that I have, and so I wanted to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you. I think the other thing I wanted to mention, I have questions here that my staff has put together that are phenomenal questions. You've answered a lot of them about workload and other things throughout your testimony, and also in your responses to the committee, so I appreciate that. And they're on our website for people to see all that workload and all the stuff that you've done, which is important. I do want to react a little bit. You sent a letter to me on April 8th as well in response to the oversight hearing, which was, I think, a very thorough and good letter, and I appreciated that, and it certainly helped me better understand, and I think we'll put this out there in the public as well, because then people can see the differences of roles and what the importance of it is. You guys have, the Ombudsman's been in office now for 2 years, the student advocate for a year now almost in May. And so I think it is time to look at it still and understand statutorily where it is that you guys are. And, there's some requirements in the statute that maybe don't make sense. We ought to get those out of the statute sooner rather than later than having them linger around. So we've talked about this some in my office. It's time for those suggestions to get on paper so that we can take care of that in the Budget Support Act as we move forward. It may actually make your operations more efficient. It may also give you more freedom to not worry about some things that may have been required previously but now shouldn't be required anymore because of your experience. And so I don't know what they are. I have an idea of some things, but not anything that I want to presume, because I want to hear from you what they are. You could put some of those on the record now if you think it's appropriate, which would be helpful for the record as we move forward with the Budget Support Act. And like, for example, Ms. Gibson Hubbard, the question of putting a family in their office, whatever drop-in center all over the city is not something we're going to fund right now. And it also may not be the best approach, because you're able to use the libraries, you're able to use the other rec centers or people's living rooms to have meetings on the issues that are important to the public regarding your office. So talk a little bit about that. Maybe we could take that out of the statute. And if there are other things, I need to know about this. For example, I know, Ms. Smith, we talked about the timing on reporting and how that maybe needs to be fixed in this Support Act. So here's the time to say it on the record, so I'll listen for a second.
Right. So we have, John Paul has definitely been helping us get along with that and helping remind us of where we need to be with that. But you are absolutely correct. The public education resource centers, which the statute says that my office may operate, are just not possible. The online education and community resource guide, though, was one of the very first things that I did in order to try to fill that void. Because as a community member myself, if you're trying to figure out, I have a 2-year-old, and you're like, what do you do about this or about that? That is definitely helpful. But getting that out to more people in a variety of different languages off of the internet will be very useful. But you are correct. That is probably the main thing. And I would also echo the sentiments of the Ombudsman. I haven't done an annual report, but knowing the amount of work that we're already trying to do, that 90 days after the school year wraps is very challenging. So that's something as well.
I'm actually going to defer to John Paul because he's working with us to submit those changes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and so all three offices are doing a strong look at best practices and trying to figure out exactly what it means when we're changing the code. We're not making changes just because we think it's it would be better like this. We're actually doing a solid look into it. There are significant numbers of parts of the SBOE code that refer to No Child Left Behind, which have to be changed in order for us to actually implement ESSA. So we will have that done, I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks, to be able to get back to at least a draft version so that we can share it with our partners at PCSB and DCPS and with the council and the administration so that we can move forward quickly.
Okay, I know you guys are looking for more staff and all, but I need that quickly. I know maybe meaning long nights, but the reality is that, I can get that done through the Budget Support Act. Getting it done in that process is easier and quicker than doing it in a regular standalone bill. And so
What
2 weeks
deadline
is
would you
pretty
like?
quick. I know 2 weeks is quick, but sooner is better.
Okay.
Okay. Because I need to look at it.
Understood.
I got to read it too, so I got to make sure I agree with it, and I have to talk to my colleagues on the committee and make sure they're in line. And I know you guys have met with some colleagues, and I hope you're bringing this to them as well, and not just talking about the budget issue, but also these other important operational issues, which are good for all of you guys. Okay. I might have a couple follow-up questions after the hearing, but for now, I think we're going to let it lie where we are. I guess the only other thing I might ask is about the language access. Language access is the law right now, so to be in compliance is important, but also we know that lots of agencies struggle with this, and we are also looking to expand language access requirements into other agencies, including here at the DC Council. So that bill's already been marked up in my committee and is waiting in the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety for their markup of it. We have asked for more staffing at the Office of Human Rights to help with this as well, and that we were not given that in the budget, but we're going to try to push to make that happen. So you guys, I understand the difficulty there, but I think it's important you do the best you can. Put that into your description of need for the dollars. If there's MPS money that's important for publications, for translations, for whatever it is. Any thoughts on that, or are you good?
We agree, especially for the Ombudsman and Chief Student Advocate. If there's a parent out there or a student out there that doesn't speak English as a first language and therefore don't have the access to the services, it's really a crime.
Great. Thank you all, and congratulations on the hard work that you put in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for you guys.